The lectionary text for today from the Gospel of John, chapter 2, verses 1 through 11. How many people are familiar with this one just by the notation? Anyone? Chapter 2, 1 through 11. You just wait. On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee. Anyone familiar at all? Jesus' mother was there. Now you're remembering the Macarena from years ago when this came up in the lectionary, right? Remember the Macarena? Does anybody remember me doing the Macarena on the altar? Okay, right. Okay, that's what that was. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples were also invited to the celebration. When the wine ran out, Jesus' mother said to him, "They don't have any wine." Jesus replied, "Woman, what does that have to do with me? My time has not come yet." His mother told the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Nearby there were 6 stone jars used for the Jewish cleansing ritual, each able to hold about 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water," and they were filled to the brim. Then he told them, "Now draw from some of them and take it to the head waiter." So they did. The head waiter tasted the water that had become wine. He didn't know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. The head waiter called the groom and said, "Everyone serves the good wine first. They bring out the second-rate wine when the guests are drinking freely. You kept the good wine until now." This was the first miraculous sign that Jesus did in Cana of Galilee. He revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Now do you know what passage I was talking about? It only comes up right here in John's Gospel. This event is a miracle by which Jesus kicks off his ministry in John's Gospel. In the others, it's this baptism. We had it last Sunday when we talked about it, the descending dove and all that stuff. But here, it's actually an event at the wedding at Cana. Now, be aware that there is an account of Jesus' baptism in John's Gospel, in the first chapter, because John doesn't have the traditional nativity. So, in the first chapter of John's Gospel, it's relayed, this story of the baptism and the dove coming down, all that's there, but it's relayed as an account told by a witness of the event. That witness would be actually John the Baptist himself. This was recorded as John's testimony when the leaders in Jerusalem sent priests and Levites to question him. They were bringing John the Baptist in to question him to see if he was or thought he was the Messiah. And John boldly told them about Jesus. But isn't that what you would do? Not me. No. It's important because this is setting up what is to come, right? Here we have this trial, this inquisition, this inquiry into the identity of the Messiah on the first day. Second day, something else happens. So he's setting up this authorities continually asking about, investigating, testing, and then eventually arresting Jesus. But this is the very first one. In John's Gospel, it happens right off the bat. They identify who Jesus is, and that there's this guy named John the Baptist who's preparing the way, and then bam, right there, in the teens, very beginning, it's like verse 15 or 16, there's an inquiry. John the Baptist relays this as a witness. We are led to believe that the writer of this gospel was not present for that baptism, but rather might have been present for this inquiry. So John the Baptist gives his testimony, and then the next day, after this inquiry with the priests and Levites, Jesus goes and steals John's disciples right from under his nose. I mean, that's really what happened, but I'm sure John had no problem with it, but that's what happened. So the second day, the next day, it says, that Jesus goes and there's these disciples that have been following John the Baptist, and Jesus is like, well, what about me, And they're like, oh, sure, we're going to go with him. And John the Baptist was like, yeah, you should, because I can't untie his shoes. I'm not worthy to do this. So this is all in agreement. So by the time you get to the third day, which is the day in question of this wedding, not the third day of the week, Jewish brides got married on Wednesday, but it's the third day in the story of John's gospel. The first day being John the Baptist prepares the way, gets an inquiry. The next day, gathers these disciples. Jesus gathers John's disciples and calls some more. So he's got a handful of them. They're not all there yet, but a couple of them are there, maybe 4. And then the third day, this miracle happens at this celebration. It is a reference to the 3 days from crucifixion to resurrection. It is a symbol, a literary device at the beginning of John's Gospel that will mirror what happens at the end of John's Gospel. I'm not spoiling it for you. You know how it ends. Day 1, the trial with John the Baptist. Day 2, the call of the disciples. Day 3, the miracle at the wedding at Cana. This foreshadowing. The end. Day 1, the trial and crucifixion of Jesus. Day 2, the disciples disperse and hide. Day 3, Mary comes to the tomb and discovers the miracle of miracles. He is not here. He is alive. So it's appropriate that Jesus in John's Gospel would begin his ministry with a miracle. And what a miracle it is! It is appropriate for ministry to begin with this kind of miracle and a celebration. In fact, I have a photo I sent. Sage, if you put it on the screen. No, it's not that one, it's the other one. Right. So somebody in our congregation, no big surprise, sent me this. It's a dish towel. It's a gift. Do you see what it reads? Does anyone know which page of the Bible explains how to turn water into wine? Asking for a friend. I love it. I love it, right? Because this is that passage. John 2, 1 through 11. So if anyone asks you in the future, if you have any friends that want to know, there's actually no formula about how to do that. It's just a story. But it's appropriate that Jesus would start the ministry this way. 2 things I want you to notice about the miracle. Number 1, it's a secret. All right, it gets written down in John's Gospel, and we all know about it, and they make dish towels about it. But in the story that it's relayed, the head waiter doesn't know where the wine came from. The groom doesn't know where the wine came from. We assume that, of course, the servants, it's told to us that the servants know exactly where it came from. They filled the water jugs. And Jesus' mother and Jesus and maybe his disciples, because they were invited to, they were at the wedding. So that's a secret. Number 2, the wine is better than the stuff they've already run out of. Okay? 2 things. It's a secret, and the wine that is created in those stone jars for the miracle is better than the stuff they had already run out of. Jesus does this miracle reluctantly. His mother is concerned. His mother is concerned. Why is his mother concerned? It's kind of a rhetorical question, but not really. I want you to think about it. What is the big concern? Jesus, they've run out of wine. The party ending early? I want to know the motivation for this, because way to go back, it's a secret. Something that Jesus did in secret. And I've looked into this and I've thought about it. And although it can be argued that Jesus did this merely to show his glory so that readers later on down the road, or maybe the disciples believed in him after that, would believe in him and that would show his glory, I think that's important. I could also say that his mother was motivated by her concern for this family that was hosting this wedding. Here's why. The head waiter has a conversation with the groom, which gives us insight into the situation. The head waiter doesn't know there's been a miracle, and it's possible the groom doesn't know either. The servants and Jesus' mother knew, possibly the disciples, but that's it. So it leads me to believe there was another reason for this miracle. This miracle, in my view, was about preserving the dignity of the host. They didn't want to run out of wine. They didn't want their lack of planning or poverty or whatever went into not having enough wine. Maybe they've got an uncle that drank it all. I don't know. They didn't want that kind of embarrassment to befall this family. And I think the mother of Jesus, in John's Gospel, she's never called by name. We call her Mary, but we know. I think this mother of Jesus said, maybe he can do something about this. Maybe this doesn't have to end this way. Maybe this doesn't have to be this big embarrassment to this family. Maybe there's something that can be done. But Jesus responds to her, my time has not yet come. But he did it anyway. It's like what he says to the Syrophoenician woman, the woman who is not a Jew, who does not belong to the children of Israel, when she begs him for a miracle, and he says, no, I'm not here to feed the dogs. And she says, yes, Lord, but even the dogs collect the crumbs. And then he says to her, go, your daughter has been healed. It's the same thing, right? And Jesus says, my time has not come yet. But Jesus is concerned about preserving the dignity of the people that he's around. Preserving the dignity of people was important for Jesus. Nobody should be put down by others for any reason. And if there's a situation that Jesus could do something about it, Jesus did. And on the subject of preserving dignity, now it's for the other picture. Let's explore the importance of dignity together on this MLK Sunday, the Sunday for human relations. Possibly the worst eviscerator of dignity on the planet is the racism against people of African descent in the U.S. And before it was the U.S. It has been such a long road, and there's still so much work to be done, from the March on Washington for Jobs to the implicit bias awareness of today. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a catalyst for change in our country. And as we celebrate his life and his ministry because of the good he did for us, we must also be reminded that the work continues. When the day comes that all of our citizens in the nation are judged by the content of their character rather than by the color of their skin, their age, or physical ability, then dignity will reign. When the day comes that people are no longer arbitrarily profiled and suspected because they look like they belong to this group or that, then dignity will reign. Somehow, guarding and preserving dignity has been lost to some degree in our society, where we tear one another down on social media completely anonymously. Things that we would never say in person. And there are other places and voices that diminish the dignity of others, objectifying and demonizing minority groups. And this kind of thing is the opposite of what Jesus wants for humanity. He used this first miracle to make his point about the preservation of dignity. To make his point about how this may not be how it has to end or happen at all. Maybe something can be done Jesus' miracle makes the groom look good. Oh yeah, he saved the best for last. And the reality is that it is only through Jesus' power that we can do these kind of miracles. I mean, I don't know actually about turning water into wine, but sometimes the progress of a culture to change the way things have been, to be better than the way things have been, seems as impossible as turning water into wine. And yet, the preserving of dignity is so essentially important to God, and it should be so essentially important to us. If we are to walk in the way and follow a leader who turns water into wine and changes and transforms lives that were lost and forgotten into new life, a new creation, which is our faith, this is what we believe. And so I would invite you to be purveyors of turning water into wine. Obviously, you can't do that for real, but maybe, I don't know, believe, right? Of turning whatever is ordinary or normalized that shouldn't be ordinary or normalized into something good that could preserve the dignity of someone else. You'll be granted the opportunities to do this throughout your life. And I hope you will. Our closing hymn today is "They'll Know We Are Christians by Our Love." Now, normally we sing that song when we're talking about love. And, always we're talking about love. That's what God, love sent Jesus to the cross, and love resurrected Jesus. But in this song, there's a verse in which it says, "We'll guard each one's dignity and save each one's pride." And the unity of this song is about how we are to walk with one another in the world. So as you are able, would you stand as we join our voices together in singing this hymn of the church, "They'll Know We Are Christians by Our Love."